is Tiffany Cabán, who's a Democrat, represents parts of Queens. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thoughts on this today? As I said it earlier, that, talk to people on all sides of this because it did divide the city. A lot of people were talking about it. Your thoughts on how it ended up?
Yeah, I mean, one, very quickly, if the mayor thinks we need better mental health care, he's got the purse, so we can make that happen. But immediately my thoughts are, one, I think about Jordan's death, and it's devastating, it's tragic, but there are a couple of truths that come out of it. I'm not surprised by the verdict, but there are some truths here, and one is that guilty, not guilty, our criminal legal system was not going to deliver true accountability or justice because it just wasn't designed to do that or to solve these problems, right? But
what do you mean by that?
Well, so like, for example, and it ties into the second truth, right? Like, here you had this young black man experiencing serious mental health issues, experiencing intermittent homelessness, killed by Daniel Penny on a train, and he was denied access, like regular access to housing and health care that wouldn't have put him in such a precarious position. We failed him, and then what we do is we dehumanize folks who are denied those things that everybody should have access to. And it creates this culture of justification around using violence against them. And that just simply is not the answer.
What is the answer? I mean, we've gone through this in the city as long as I can remember. I grew up around here, and there were certain years, when Giuliani was in, for example, with the criticism there was always just pushing off the problem. Doesn't care about a city south of 96th Street. That's what people used to say then. Then when, de Blasio or some other mayors come in and say, well, they're too liberal. What is the answer to some of these issues?
I mean, where I lean in, and again, I was, before coming into public service as a council member, I was a public defender for almost 8 years. Representing people on everything from turnstile jumps to homicides. I've seen it all. I've had many clients that remind me a lot of Jordan Neely. And I'm also a policy nerd and a wonk. And I look at the empirical evidence and the research, and I just want to know what is going to give us the best public health and public safety outcomes. And criminalization and incarceration just isn't it, right? And so if we can agree that we have a mental health crisis, then we have to scale proven strategies to the size of that crisis. Right now, Rikers Island.
Because this guy was in and out of Rikers. Rikers is a famous jail here in New York.
Largest mental health provider in the state.
Is Rikers Island, jail. So this guy was in and out of jail a lot, and then he comes on the subway train. He's, clearly has issues, but he's threatening to harm people. And then Daniel Penny does what he does in the trial. But you're saying, what, that the jail was part of the problem, that there should have been something else that was not happening?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one, we all would say that if you try the same thing over and over again and keep getting the same results, that's the definition of
insanity,
right. But what a person like Jordan Neely needed, and quite frankly, a lot of my clients, who, by the way, came from all walks of life, I represented so many combat veterans whose criminal histories looked identical to Jordan Neely's because they were failed by lack of access to mental health care and stable housing. And they're not any different, right? We have, in our city, we have mental health clubhouses that work. We have crisis respite centers. We have supportive housing, but we have too little of it. And so people who desperately need it can't access it.
Now, in the short term, we also have this issue with safety in our subways. Forget about the city in general. I try to separate the two, because when you look at the data, there is a separation for how safe it is on the streets of New York versus underground. The subway system has been a problem. So what do you say to people who say, well, this is great, long term, you may be right and we have to do more, but what about now? How do we stay safe other than, take actions into our own hands, as was the case here?
I mean, it's a good question, right? Because people are concerned about their safety in a moment. And it's no good telling folks that we are one of the safest, big cities in the entire country.
No, not when you're on the train and you're packed in and you have nowhere else to go. You don't feel safe and something like this happens, The
reality is that a person who is experiencing serious mental health issues or homelessness, they're actually exponentially more likely to be the victims of violence than anyone else.
Yeah, we talked about that last week. It's true. All this data shows that, but that doesn't make anybody any less afraid, or in the cases where they are the perpetrators of violence, doesn't make it something that we don't have to deal with. I mean, we have to do both, right?
Yeah, and having the right responders at the right times, right? We have alternate responders. We have mental health responders. We have all of these different things. But again, we're not making them readily available so that they're there when we need them.
Thanks so much for watching. Just go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.